Okay, so the next thing to talk about is calculating average cost. So this will be important for determining your profit. So average cost curves show how the average costs change as your output changes. All right, so this will be important for your profitability. Right? You want to know how much profit you're going to make. You need to know what your average cost is. But your average cost will change as you produce different amounts of output. Now, on one hand, you have this fixed cost for your capital. And when you have fixed cost, it's better to produce more, because then you get to spread out that fixed cost, right? So then you'll have a lower average cost if you can produce more to help pay for that fixed cost. But at the same time, as you produce more, you're hiring more and more workers to share the capital, productivity is going down, and your marginal costs are going up. So your average costs have these two opposing forces as you try to produce more. On one hand, you get to spread out your fixed costs, and that's good. That will help bring your average costs down. But on the other hand, as you produce more, your workers are becoming less productive, and so that's going to make your average costs go higher. All right, so average costs we can calculate for total or fixed or variable. All right. Okay, so now we'll carry on with the pierogi food truck example. And so I've got most of them filled out for you. There. Okay. All right, so this table here now. Okay, I didn't copy down all the numbers because that was going to take me way too long. But we've got all the numbers from here, right? It's all the same numbers. Actually, this table has all the answers for the previous exercise, which nobody ever notices. Okay, all right, so we're just taking the cost and dividing by the quantity. And so again, I didn't copy down all the same numbers here, but so fixed cost is just 300. So we're taking 300 divided by 100, 300 divided by 185, 300 divided by 255, and so on. Okay, so let's fill in the bottom ones here. So 300 is the fixed cost, and now for this one we'll divide by 375. Okay, so 300 divided by 375, 0.8. And then 300 divided by 385. And that will be the same for the next one as well, because the quantity has not changed. Good. Okay. So your average fixed cost, of course, will decrease because as you produce more output, you're spreading out the fixed cost over a larger quantity. So your average fixed cost will just go down and down and down as you produce more. So that's good. That's a benefit of producing more. Now your average variable cost, we're just taking the variable cost numbers and dividing by the quantity. And so yeah, so 380 divided by 100, 715 divided by 185, and so on. So we'll move down to this one here. So at this one, the variable cost was 1605. So 1605 divided by quantity, 375. It'll be 4.28. Next one, the variable cost is 1715 divided by 385. And then last one, variable cost is 1795 divided by 385. All right, so your average variable cost will go up for the same reason why marginal costs go up. Right? Marginal costs increase because the increase in output gets smaller and smaller, and so the per unit cost is going up because your workers are becoming less productive. So likewise, for the average variable cost, it will go up because your workers are becoming less productive, and your variable cost is your workers. And so if they're less productive, then you have to pay for more workers to produce the output. Now, for the average total cost, you can take total cost divided by quantity, or you can just add these two together, right? Because the average fixed and the average variable would be the average total. Okay, so average total cost is also average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Okay? All right, so we'll do it that way. So for these last ones here, when you try to increase your output, that will mean that your average fixed cost goes down because you get to spread out the fixed cost over a larger and larger quantity. But as you try to increase output, your workers will become less productive because they're having to share the capital. So your average variable cost, which is the cost of your workers, will go up. Yeah, you guys are getting really loud. Okay. Your average total cost is the sum of both of them. So this is the sum of a decreasing number and an increasing number. And so what happens to this number, whether it increases or decreases, depends on which is bigger, the decrease or the increase. Okay, so that makes sense, right? If you start a business and you've paid for all the fixed cost, then as you increase output, at first your average costs are going to go down because you're spreading out the fixed costs. But then as you try to hire more and more workers, then that effect of the diminishing marginal product kicks in, right? The decreasing productivity starts to kick in, and then your costs will start to go up. All right. Now on the next page is a bigger example. All right, so this is a bigger example. This is about a chair producer, but the pattern of the numbers is all the same. So we've got quantity of output, we have a fixed cost, which is fixed, we have a variable cost, which increases, a marginal cost. Now the marginal cost actually decreases at first, right? It goes from 30 to 20 to 10, and then it starts to increase. And we'll talk about examples like that in a little bit. Average variable cost, likewise, it goes down a little bit and then it starts to increase. So marginal cost and average variable cost will follow a similar pattern. They're not the same calculation, of course, right? Variable cost is variable cost divided by Q, that's your average variable cost, whereas marginal cost is the change in your variable cost relative to the change in output. So it's a little bit different, but it would follow the same pattern, right? And if your workers are becoming less productive, then both costs would increase. Okay, average fixed cost, so that's just a decreasing number. You're spreading out that $100 fixed cost over the larger and larger quantity. And then the average total goes down until here. So it's a decreasing number to here. So up to here, the decrease in the average fixed cost outweighs the increase in the average variable cost, and so your average total goes down. But once we get past there, now the increase in the average variable is now more significant than the decrease in the average fixed cost, and so then your average total cost will start to go up. And on the next page is a graph, which will make it a lot easier to see these patterns. So in your notes, you just have the dots. If you want to draw the lines like I did there, then it will make it more clear. Okay, so now we can see the pattern visually in the numbers that we were just calculating. Okay, so this is your average fixed cost, which will go down and down as you spread out the fixed cost over more and more units of output. This one is your average variable cost, and this one is your marginal cost. And again, these two are not the same exactly, but they do follow the same pattern. So they both go, if they're both going down, they'll both go down, and then they both go up. And then the average total cost, which is this one, is the sum of both of these ones. Now, for your average total cost, you've got the opposing effects of an decreasing average fixed cost and an increasing average variable cost. And so this curve is the sum of these two curves. Now, both of them go down, so of course that will go down. But then they start to go in opposite directions. The average fixed cost is going down, and the average variable cost is going up. As long as the down change is more than the up change, then the total will be a net down change. But as soon as we get over here, where the up change is bigger than the down change, then the net effect will be that the average total goes up. So, as a business, as your business starts out small and grows and you produce more and more, your average cost will go down because of the strong benefit of being able to spread out your fixed costs. But then, eventually, you start producing more and more, and the diminishing productivity of your workers kicks in, and that raises your average variable costs, and that starts to bring up your average total costs. And let me use an equation to say that as well. Okay, so your average fixed costs are a number that decreases as you produce more, whereas your average variable costs are a number that increases as you produce more. If the decrease is bigger than the increase, then your average total will go down. If the increase is bigger than the decrease, then your average total will go up. So the decrease, there's a name for this, which is in your notes. It's in your notes. We're going to talk about that next. This is called the spreading effect. So in other words, you get to spread out your fixed costs as you produce more. But then your workers become less productive because of diminishing marginal returns. And so then this increase in your average variable cost is called the diminishing returns effect. Good. Okay. All right, so first, when the spreading effect is stronger, the spreading effect is the fact that your average fixed costs are decreasing as you produce more and more. So you're getting to spread out your fixed costs. This happens if you have kids too, because there's certain fixed costs for having kids. So like if you get one kid, then you have to buy a crib, for example. So then you've got, I don't know, whatever that costs. Actually, we got ours for free, so ours didn't cost anything. But you could spend, like, say, $500 on a crib for the first baby, so that's a $500 cost. But if you have a second baby, then it's only an average of $250. So that's the spreading effect. Okay, so average fixed costs will decrease as output increases. And so that will help to bring down your average total costs. But then you have to use more and more variable inputs like labor, and they will become less productive. And so that brings up your average variable costs. So that's called the diminishing returns effect. Okay, so that will then increase your average total costs. Now, okay, so on one hand, you have declining average fixed costs, which is great, but then you've got increasing average variable costs. As long as the declining average fixed cost more than makes up for the rising average variable cost, then your average total cost will go down, right? So sloping down. So that's when the spreading effect is more significant than the diminishing returns effect. But if the opposite becomes true, which is at larger amounts of output, if the diminishing returns effect is stronger, that's going to bring your total costs up. So the average total cost curve would slope up. Okay, so the two effects together mean that the average total cost curve is U-shaped. So it goes up, and, it goes down and then it goes up.